All right. Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be with you today. It is Tuesday. It's an Arlen Tuesday. How you doing today, Arlen?
I'm doing just fine, Hal. It's looking at the news, I just think we're at an incredible moment. Like something's going to happen real soon. But as far as, my life, it's cold outside, it's snowing outside. So I spend a lot of time inside.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the weather. Now, I don't like to pit my guests against each other and try to have one win. But yesterday, Mike Olis called in from Indiana. He's a friend of Halitics. This was his second appearance. You've been on umpteen times, Arlen. So you've got more appearances than Mike. But let's get to the real brass tacks here. Temperature. Mike said it was below zero, not below freezing, not below 0 Celsius or centigrade, but actually below 0 Fahrenheit in his little town outside Indianapolis. Can you beat that up there in the Green Mountain State?
Not.
Oh,
I'll give him that win and I'll let him have it. I certainly don't want it.
Well, I asked him if he was bringing the cow into the house because apparently cows generate a lot of heat and the peasants in the Middle Ages would always sleep with their animals in the winter because of the cold. But he said, no, the cow stays in the barn. Actually, he said they don't have a cow, but there are cows where he lives, but not where he lives specifically. So are you like getting out in the snow? You said you stay inside. Now, my mom, who's a little older than you are, she likes to snowshoe. Is that not something you'll do? Because I think it's fun.
I'm a Californian boy, all the way through. So I don't do any of those, winter sports and all that kind of thing. I will go out, for a walk or to go to some errand and, get in the car with all bundled up and get out of it real fast. But so, this is very unusual for me. We usually don't stay this late in December, but we have, and it's been very, very cold, as you can imagine.
Last I checked, there's plenty of mountains and snow in California. I guess you were down in the Southland, but Mammoth, right? Not that far. You probably had high school chums who would go out to Mammoth to ski, I'm guessing, when you were a kid.
Yeah, my wife Nancy skis in California sometimes with our daughter. Says it's better skiing than it is on the East Coast because of the ice or the ground or whatever. I don't understand it. I'm not a skier.
Well, I envy you a little bit. I don't ski there anymore. Used to be an avid skier, but my knees and more to the point, my back can't take it. But snowshoeing is fun. Cross country skiing is much less hard on one's body even than walking. I know you're an avid walker. When you cross country ski on relatively soft snow, Arlen, think about it. You're just sliding, you're gliding, so you're not even putting any real trauma on your knees, which do get pounded when you walk, and obviously more so when one runs.
Well, if you're recommending that, I will certainly think about it.
Okay, well, I'll check back with you. Arlen, you mentioned rough. We're looking at who knows what's going on in our country. It's definitely interesting times as the Chinese curse goes. A lot of violence over the weekend, and Mike and I did discuss this yesterday. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but the shooter at Brown University, as far as I can tell, I checked, is still at large. The person of interest was released before yesterday's program. That's why I have the little release there. And we had terrible violence, as you know. Let me see if I can get your big picture report ID there. Let's see. There it is. Big picture. Thebigpicturereport.com is where Arlen blogs. We got 3 stories he's posted there. Maybe it's 2, plus Tom Friedman was your recommendation as well. We're going to get to all of that, folks. I promise you. Just wanted to mention, though, the other, in terms of obviously carnage, worse incident over the weekend in Sydney, Australia. Arlen, one big difference, a number of differences between them. One difference is the Australian Prime Minister is already talking about, and I believe has already started the process of toughening the gun laws in Australia, which are already much more stringent than here. There's no talk in this country after these terrible mass murders of such efforts.
That will not be the case. People shy away from it here, but I think what people are talking about more than anything else, Rob Reiner and his wife were killed by their son, and how Trump's reaction was. He actually, gave Rob Reiner a really bad time. A lot criticized him a lot. It's not normal to do that when somebody dies, and people are noticing that he has no sense of normalcy.
Yeah, so he, I guess, said Trump, and I don't have the quote here. Perhaps I should have had it ready for this, Arlen, but apparently I think Trump said something like, maybe you have it, that Reiner brought it on himself because of his Trump derangement syndrome. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, it was along those lines. It included Trump derangement syndrome too. It was pretty harsh, and a lot of conservatives are very upset with Trump, and I don't blame them. I think he's just every day seems to get worse and worse.
Seems almost like a delusional comment, doesn't it? I mean, it's so narcissistic. For one thing, he has to put himself front and center. This was ultimately, and I think known very early on, Arlen, as a family tragedy. The couple's mentally ill son, he has an addiction problem, maybe some other issues as well, came early in his teen years. And there were a lot of tensions in that family. And ultimately, the son stabbed his parents to death. It was not a political murder. This could not really even be construed as such. Most people would instinctively feel great empathy for a family destroyed by mental illness and ultimately leading to murder. Trump obviously really doesn't have the capability to do that, to empathize. It's only about him.
Yeah, and let's not forget, remember when John McCain died and the things that Trump said about John McCain, he's not a hero, and, why do people fight in wars? And he was just, outrageous, but yet people tolerated it then. I don't know if they're going to tolerate it now.
There's been a lot of pushback, a lot of Republicans saying this was inappropriate. He handled it terribly. I don't think there's any doubt. I think this is partly because it's indefensible, what Trump said. And I think it's partly, tell me if you agree with this, Arlen, what you're seeing from Reich and others, that the Trump brand is definitely in decline at this point.
Yeah, I do think that. I mean, look at the economy. He keeps trying to convince people that the economy is great when, the numbers say differently. People go into the store and they see the prices and they know that's not true. So I think his popularity, his approval rating is plummeting. And because he's not doing what he promised. And so I think a lot of Republicans are feeling a little safer criticizing him, where prior to this, they haven't been willing to do it, criticizing Trump.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, don't forget, please do click like, click subscribe. I've got the subscribe bell there chiming, and visually anyway, would love to have you be a subscriber. There's the little thumb up for the like. And if you don't like us, that's fine too. Do click dislike. I don't care. I do care. I'd prefer to see likes than dislikes, but likes or dislikes both are engagement, and that's what we really want to see. We'll talk briefly about the Australia shooting as well. Arlen, I mentioned that they're already beginning the process, or already amidst the process of strengthening their already strict gun laws. But I also wanted to broach with you the argument, or the conversation around anti-Semitism. Was the shooting there where 15 were killed at a picnic on the beach that Chabad, which is a Jewish kind of institution, not quite a synagogue, but similar, Chabad was holding, 15 were killed. The man who stopped the shooter, by the way, happened to be Muslim, there were two shooters. The man who stopped them was Muslim, and Netanyahu, getting a lot of criticism for first identifying him as Jewish, did come around and call him a brave Muslim man. So I guess we'll give him grudging acknowledgement that he did get it right in the end. Arlen, you said to me something very interesting. I want you to repeat it. You don't necessarily look for motives or try to parse exactly what was going on when these mass murders occur. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, when you have one or two crazy people who do this kind of a shooting, they're just crazy people. And so, I don't know that they have a motive that makes any sense or not. and as far as anti-Semitism these days, a lot of it is from what Israel is doing, and a lot of it is just because they're Jewish. And there's both, and so you never can know for sure what what the motivation is for, with somebody like that. So I tend to not try to figure out why this happens when it does in this kind of a case.
Very interesting take, Arlen. I appreciate that, and I think it's certainly intellectually defensible. I tend to be a little more interested in root causes beyond, I think we both are, the easy availability of weapons, right? I mean, we both would agree that's a terrible problem and probably the biggest driver. There are other factors, obviously, as well. Now, it's interesting, the Australian Prime Minister, Albanese, did say that there was an extremist ideology at play. Netanyahu actually blamed Australia for recognizing the Palestinian state. He obviously taking his cue from Trump, going as low as possible. The Australian Prime Minister pushed back. But one factor that hasn't been covered as much as I would like, and I just want your take if you think, because I respond to those who have said this is anti-Semitic, and many have said that, including the mayor of New York, the newly elected mayor, the mayor-elect, Zoran Kwame. I did not know. Did you know his middle name was Kwame? That's interesting.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So Zoran Kwame Mamdani, and I was wondering, could this be a fake account? But he's got a blue check, so I'm going to say it's not. He calls it a vile act of anti-Semitic terror, and he keeps the Chabad movement in his prayers. Yeah, I have a little bit of a problem with that, Arlen. Just hear me out on this, and then I'll let you get the final word in. Eric Adams called it globalizing the Intifada writ large. A response to that was stop inciting Islamophobic hate, you bigoted piece of shit, which I have to admit I thought was a pretty witty little response by Talia Jane. But here's where I have an issue. The rabbi of that Chabad uses as his Facebook background picture him breaking bread with Israeli soldiers. And the Chabad movement, I'm not sure how much this particular Chabad Lubavitcher in Sydney participated in the colonizing movement, but the Chabad movement in general has been very, very aggressive in pushing the settlements on the West Bank, which obviously is on land that is owned by Palestinians. So I do see that as a very plausible motivating factor, and what I at least would like us to, or at least I'd like people to recognize. Any thoughts on that?
Well, when you showed the picture of his post with his middle name included, I was just thinking, Donald Trump right now had a good meeting with the guy, but if he turns out that Trump doesn't like him anymore, you can bet that Trump is going to call him by all three names, like he did with Barack Hussein Obama. So, that I can expect. But as far as the reasons, again, these are two crazy people. I don't know what their reason is, but I think there is a surge in anti-Semitism across the world. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Part of it, again, because of this Israeli politics and their foreign policy and military. But, there are other, some just don't like Jewish people. And that's the other reason. Oh, by the way, one more thing. The Republican Party has a problem with this too. There's a segment of the Republican Party that has a few people that talk Nazi-like language, and and somehow they seep into some of these MAGA websites and things like that. So that's another issue.
Yeah, no question about it. Oh, I just jumped ahead, but let me there you see the rabbi. That's one of his Facebook prominent pictures, him breaking bread there with Israeli soldiers. And then this is from Middle East Monitor, so you can have some people don't believe that's a credible source. I believe it is. And you can see there the Chabad Lubavitch movement. And it was a Chabad Lubavitcher Chabad. has long rejected Palestinian rights and opposes any political settlement. So there's issues beyond just these were Jewish people celebrating Hanukkah. It was a specific institution that is associated with an aggressive form of Zionism, a colonial form. So I think that's relevant. That doesn't justify what happened, but I think it is something to keep in mind.
One thing we both agree on is the Israeli foreign policy, the way they run their government, the fact that there's so many ultra-Orthodox people in Israel that right now are not allowed or not allowed to fight in the military. And
well, they're not required to. They're allowed to simply promote the most aggressive policies against Palestinians, while at the same time relying on the rest of the citizenry to face the wrath.
And another thing to consider too is ultra-Orthodox Jews tend to populate faster than others. So the population of Israel is changing, and that could be problematic. So Israel has a lot of problems, and Netanyahu is being their leader is certainly one of the biggest. So we both have problems with Israel.
All right, let's move on, Arlen. Unless you had something else you wanted to add. I don't know if you did. I'm going to just put this screen up. You talked about Rob Reiner. Just real quick, we'll go back. We'll just kind of tie a bow. Very, very sad. I had some issues with Rob Reiner. Apparently he's, good friends with Stephanie Miller. I don't know if you knew that, Arlen, but they often gather.
Well, something, I think he was friends with everybody. I've heard a lot of conservative people say what a nice guy he is, and I've heard universal praise for him, except, of course, from the White House, which is getting a lot of play for Trump being so negative to somebody who just died. So, Reiner was I don't see anything wrong with Reiner. I thought he was a pretty good guy. Oh, by the way, those who do listen to Stephanie Miller, I found out that Jim Ward, who did the voices on Stephanie's show, died within the last few days.
I thought you were going to say that, Arlen. I did not know that. I'm very sorry to hear that. I remember Jim Ward. Do you recall seeing him in Monterey? I believe he came to at least one of the shows Stephanie did very early on in the first year or two of KRXA operations.
Yeah. Well, I do remember going to one of those events, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed Stephanie Miller a lot. I don't listen to her much anymore, but, Jim Ward was a big part of it, but he was, I guess, an unhealthy kind of a guy, and he died relatively young. I heard 66 years old.
Well, he left the show, too. She, during the run when she was actually on KRXA 540, he actually did stop doing it, and I think there were some political differences between Jim and Stephanie. I think actually his politics were a little closer to mine than maybe to hers. That may have been part of it. I don't really know. She was very strong Democrat, right? I mean, she really was ultimately a Democratic Party loyalist, I think is fair to say, without being pejorative. Just that's who she is. I think Jim Ward had some issues with that among.
Well, by the way, I also heard that Jim Ward may have had Alzheimer's the last few years, so that's another factor.
In his 60s? Doesn't that seem early? That's very early onset, I suppose.
It is unusually early, but anyway, Nancy had read something that said that, and, it's quite possible. So, it's a real shame.
Very, very talented guy, very successful voice actor. Yeah. I believe he was on many, many cartoons and did a lot of voice acting. Arlen, mentioned Stephanie Miller as a talk show host who had only good things and close relationship with Rob Reiner. Here's another radio host you probably remember who was very closely associated with KRXA and myself, who also had some very kind words. I really wanted to share this. Peter B. Collins here. And I almost invited Peter to come on, but I didn't want to pressure him to. But if he's watching, he's certainly welcome. We always love Peter, always have him on. But this was a really nice little comment. I don't know if you can see that, but he pointed out that Rob Reiner helped pass a tobacco tax in California. This was before I moved out there, and that led to a number of positive developments beyond just the disincentivizing of consumption of tobacco, but also money available for childhood initiatives, including Childhood Matters with Rona Renner. So really nice comments by Peter.
Yeah, Peter's a pretty smart guy, and I think you're about the only one who's ever expressed any discontent with Rob Reiner, because everything.
Maybe a little unfair. I'll tell you what it was. His gatherings with Stephanie Miller struck me, and I read an article about this. Hyper partisan. You had to be. This is in Trump's first term. You had to be totally against Trump. You couldn't criticize anything the Democrats did without getting the ire of the host, whether it was Reiner or Stephanie, if it was at her house. They were just very, very dogmatic Dems as opposed to progressives. And I think that's the issue I had. But I take your point. To everyone with whom he worked, he was a great guy, meaning Reiner, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, even a lot of conservatives, Republicans liked him, thought he was really good person and all that. So he had a lot of friends, and it's really tragic. He's on TV so often. It's really tragic that he will not be on anymore.
Well, I always thought Spinal Tap was one of the funniest movies I ever saw. I just remember sitting in a hotel room one time and just laughing uproariously to the jokes by myself, just thinking this is one of the funniest things I ever saw. So, yeah. And
also, All in the Family was a big thing that he was part of that I think changed our culture quite a bit. It was very popular and interesting, and people talked about it quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I like that show too. He was more of an actor, and I don't know that how much he helped in the creative process of All in the Family. He may have. He may have written some of the scripts. I'm not really clear. But there you go. Yeah. There's Trump. There's the president's lowest possible road possible.
Yeah. This may be the end of Trump. I think the beginning of the end of Trump. I think something like this is going to, a lot of people will drop off of his fan club, and pretty soon J.D. Vance will come forward, and I think Vance will be president sometime in the next few weeks, in my opinion. That's my prediction.
Oh, wow. Listen to that. Arlen with a bold prediction going out on a limb. So you're saying Trump will not serve out this term. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the Republicans, went along with him because they thought they were sure winners. But now that they see that he's losing popularity, they realize that he could actually be a deficit. So I think a lot of them will take that into consideration, and maybe it'll be possible, he'll be gone, because he sure does seem kind of demented in a lot of ways,
Arlen,
saying crazier things.
And you even said, correct me if I'm wrong, in the next few weeks, you could see this happening. Is that right? Did I mishear you? Maybe I misheard you.
Well, that's my prediction, but I'm not going to put any money on it. I just think that, he's just starting to get worse and worse every single day, and saying crazier and crazier things every day. And also, let's not forget that the Epstein files will come out pretty soon, or they're supposed to.
Well, they're coming out. They're trickling out. They're trickling. The Democrats are releasing photos and some commentary, which certainly nothing has come. There's no, I don't think there's really a smoking gun exactly against Trump, but it just doesn't look good. I mean, it doesn't look good at all. It raises more questions, obviously. Calls in, nobody's ever really accused Trump of being a truth teller, but, all of his denials, I barely knew the guy, are obviously proven falsehoods.
Yeah. Epstein had said he was, Trump was his best friend. So, and also, I think the files really are controlled right now by Pam Bondi in the Justice Department, and they're the ones that are going to be releasing it, from my understanding. And who knows what kind of redacting they've done, or what kind of mischief they've done with whatever, whenever Trump is mentioned. It's a lot of people will be watching very carefully.
Well, am I missing something, Arlen? Because I've been reading that the Democrats have been releasing pictures and other materials in the files. Is that not the complete files? I understand the Justice Department has ultimate control, but at least some of the material has already made its way into the public domain. Or am I wrong about that?
Well, no, you're right, because I think a lot of it are photographs from the Epstein family, that both parties are able to get. And of course, the Democrats are the ones that want to push it out there. But as far as the actual, detailed report, that's in the hands of the Justice Department. And they have just a few more days, I think, before they have to release it.
Yeah, Arlen, as unsurprisingly, you are correct. I'm just reading this here from BBC. So new Epstein images for the second time today. This is a few days ago now, but the nearly 100 images we've seen today are not part of the Epstein files, which the Department of Justice is required to release by December 19th, and said they're from his estate. So, yeah, they're not what the Justice Department had collected in its investigations. A really good point, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I was it never really kind of coalesced in my mind. Wait, if there's an Epstein file or there are Epstein files that aren't released, how come the Democrats release them? So you clarified that.
Well, also, there's just there's a lot of confusion about a lot of things that have to do with information and evidence from the Epstein estate. Some people, sometimes it's the responsibility of Bondi, sometimes it's the responsibility of somebody else, and it's just confusing. And we don't know what the actual final outcome will be, what they actually put out there for the public to see.
All right, let me see if I wanted to just show folks a little bit of what we're talking about here, but it's been tough because I'm getting a weird, something weird in my, yeah, that should work. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Let me just quickly, because I always like to show people beyond just repeat, but exactly what Arlen was saying. Yeah, there's files that were already available. That's what we're seeing. And probably within the next few days, we'll get more. Do you think that the Bondi Justice Department will, in fact, release the entire files as they're supposed to do?
I think if they could find a way to redact a lot of things, they will certainly try to do it. But I don't know if it's really possible, because you've got, Republicans, you've got the victims of Epstein who are watching very carefully. And if they see something that looks like it's, not done properly, or, information not allowed, I think, there'll be a pushback.
Robert Garcia, Democrat from Southern California, says that some of the images that the Democrats do have based on control of the estate, he calls disturbing. I heard another podcaster say the Democrats may well be holding in reserve some of the most shocking, the most upsetting images for, say, an September, October surprise next year, and perhaps in 28 as well. What do you think about that speculation?
Oh, well, I suppose that's possible too. There's, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, there's, and where the information is that could really, destroy Trump. But it's certainly, there's something out there, and he doesn't want it to be presented. And let's not forget, Pam Bondi said, "Oh, I have the file here," and then she said she didn't. And Trump said, "Oh, we have the file, and it's okay to release it." And then he didn't. So, yeah, again, confusion is natural in a case like this, but I don't think they're going to be able to get away with eliminating the evidence that would really help the public.
All right, Arlen, let's move on. Now, this was an article you brought to my attention. Here you go, Thomas Friedman, very influential for sure, foreign policy writer in the New York Times. And tell us why Trump isn't interested in fighting a new Cold War. He wants a new civilizational war, which, by the way, I did not know civilizational was a word, but I appreciate learning something new every day. I use this, by the way, as my thumbnail, Arlen, because my question is, do we need to have either? Why can't we have neither? I don't want a Cold War. I don't want a civilizational war. I'm getting the sense from Friedman. Tell me if I'm wrong. He said, yeah, Cold War, no problem. We just don't want a civilizational war. What's your take on that? And why in bigger pictures and bigger letters did you choose this article as one you wanted to discuss in the first place?
As we normally expect, the American president is in Cold War mode, and he'll be against China and Russia. But Trump is not a normal president. He does things a lot differently. And what Friedman means by a new civilizational war is that a lot of it has to do with the people that we've allowed in our country. The white Christian right is trying to ascend and get more and more power, and blaming immigrants and minorities for all the failings that happen in this country. So that's Trump. He's not typical, and he seems to have a lot of bias and hate, and a lot of people respond to that.
Well, and I think what also Friedman is saying is it's not just a civilization in the United States. It's kind of what he would call, or what many of us call, Western civilization, European colonizer civilization, however you want to describe it, that Trump seems to be portraying himself as defending.
Yeah, he normally he doesn't like Europe, and one of the reasons I think Friedman mentioned it is because there's been so much immigration into Europe. They're no longer a white, fully white countries anymore, and so they're bringing immigrants in the same way that we are, and Trump is making the case that they've ruined our country, and he'll probably agrees that they're ruining Europe too. So that's the way he sees it.
I mean, that certainly seems to be a lens that I think is accurate that Friedman is using, that Trump is, I would put it a little differently than Friedman. I think he's taking advantage of a lot of the destabilization, a lot of the disaffectation that we're seeing in these countries where, as they become more and more neoliberal, more and more embracing kind of an American style rapacious capitalism, still undergirded in Europe by a much more robust welfare state, but putting people more and more on their own. I think there's more fear, more resentment, and a convenient scapegoat is the Muslim immigrants who are coming to Europe because Europe and the United States have done so much damage to their countries. So I see it a little differently than Friedman, but I don't disagree that Trump is taking advantage of using our innate tribalism and the insecurities that people do feel today for good reason.
And there's another thing Friedman mentions, and that Trump is pushing to get other people like him, other leaders like him in office, and we have had a few of those, and he'd like to see more. He wants the rest of the world to become, the kind of world that he would like, that he envisions Trump. So I think that's, that's why he doesn't necessarily isn't on the same side as many of us.
Well, he does do that. I mean, you look at Viktor Orban in Hungary, of whom he seems to be very enamored, or with whom he's enamored. Same with Putin, right? I mean, Putin is kind of a strong leader, and Friedman makes the point that Putin is perceived on the right as more of a defender of white civilization than some of these flabby, feckless liberal states in Western Europe, and UK, France, maybe Germany as well, Spain.
There's something else too, and that's the Venezuelan situation. Nobody's quite sure what Trump is going to do. He may start a war if he felt that would help him in the country, or get us more oil. That's really uncertain and a real mess right now.
It's terrifying. The oil circumstances really militate so strongly against intervention. Oil is cheap. We have a surplus of oil. We don't need it. We don't want it. It's bad for the environment. Trump is a huge fossil fuels guy. And yet even there, I'm sure the the big fossil fuel companies, the big oil companies don't particularly want a sudden influx of Venezuelan oil, which would only reduce the value of their own assets. So but again, Trump will look for any excuse, and I agree with you. I'm sure he does look at I guess Venezuela has the most proven reserves of oil in the world. I'm sure he wants that, covets it.
Yeah, there's another thing too. I was listening to Face the Nation yesterday or Sunday, and they were talking about. I know they had a long interview with the opposition leader, a woman in Venezuela, and she actually got the Nobel Peace Prize, something that Trump wants, because she's very much anti-Maduro and wants to change the government there. So I'm sure that's another reason for Trump not to like the Nobel Prize Committee.
Well, she's kind of his gal, I understand. I mean, they're on the same side. They're both against the Chavistas or Chavistas, however they're called. Maduro, one of the successors to the Chavista regime. So there is the sense, I think, some had that she was chosen, the Nobel Prize winner, kind of a hard right Venezuelan, to appease those who wanted Trump to get the prize. Arlen, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder about the Nobel Prize Committee. I thought they were more of a liberal bent, but maybe they're not, because definitely, she does say real nice things about Trump. So I'm not sure that I like her, but why she got the Nobel Peace Prize, I'll have to look into that a little more closely.
Arlen, I told you that I was going to pick some nits in Friedman's article, and here's one, just sort of like not so much of nitpicking exactly, but to point out again where I just differ with him. So he makes the point that he doesn't agree with those who reduce every crisis to the dry metrics of economics. And I do. I do reduce every crisis. I mean, I don't say it's the only factor, but I think his leaning on psychology and anthropology only works, right? This whole psychology, we are a white nation, we are a Christian nation. That only works if people feel economically insecure, or if people feel like I can get more from somebody else. So ultimately, it is based on economics. Psychology and anthropology, the whole idea, is, well, they're my group, they're my people, we're under duress, we're under attack. But that works, again, if you actually have some legitimate sentiment, or at least some belief you can get something more. But if you have a society which we don't have now, where we all have enough, where we're not on our own, where we get support from the government. If we need medical treatment, we can get it. We don't have to pay for it. We're not going to go bankrupt. If our kid is a bright kid and does well in school, they're going to get a great education. They can go to Cal for free. They don't have to pay. They can send their kid to University of California and it doesn't cost them anything. If we had that society, I don't think these fears, now maybe you disagree with this, I don't think the psychology and anthropology that Friedman leans on would have much resonance.
Well, there's no question that several decades ago, when I was growing up, the United States government looked like it was running efficiently. People were making enough money to, send their kids to college and buy cars and houses, even with one paycheck. And it's totally different now. And, people are hurting financially. They're economically. Inflation is a real problem for so many people. So, that's important, but so is psychology and anthropology too. I think they all kind of work together to be effective.
I won't argue that point. I'll just say one other. I'll add on to that. I think it's not just if you have enough, you tend not to be resentful. I think it goes beyond that. If you live in a society where you think, it's pretty fair. Sure, maybe the guy down the street has a little more than I do, and I don't like that. And maybe it's just because he was lucky and he inherited it or what have you, or he's stupider than I am, he shouldn't have it. Sure, there'd be some resentment. But if people don't live that much better than you, if they don't have that much more than you, and if you can't really fall that much far, you can't fall very far, there's always going to be a pretty hard floor beneath you. When I say a hard floor, I mean, you're not going to sink below it, right? It's not like a rent safety net. It's solid. If you have that, again, I think it's not just enough to know that everyone has enough. It's also that no one has too much. No one's gotten super rich by destroying your main street, by building some superstore 5 miles outside of town and completely turning Main Street into a ghost town, or by building giant warehouses where they just truck in supply, goods, and they undermine every retailer in the neighborhood, in the state, really. I think that's also got to be part of it. You have to have a society where, again, we all can rise, but we all don't fall that far. We don't rise that far. I think that's why people are saying a lot, whose country is this anyway? People look at America and they say, hey, it's Wall Street's country. It's the tech bros country. It's Israel. U.S. is Israel's country. We're spending billions and tens of billions of dollars to Israel when we don't even have health care here. So I think it's all those factors. That's why people are asking, or that's why I think Friedman observes that there hasn't been this dissatisfaction over the past 40 years.
And there's another factor, I think, is people are more and more aware of just how excessive wealth has gotten in this country. The difference between the wealthy and the poor is so astounding now, and it keeps getting worse. The Democrats made a good point of saying that Trump put a lot of effort into getting tax cuts for billionaires. And, who really supports that? I mean, just the billionaires, of course. So,
well, that was a good segue, Arlen, to your piece. I'm going to jump ahead now, although we can always go back to Friedman. Tom Hartman, is the morbidly rich's brilliance just a threat to the republic? I would say yes, of course. I mean, that seems like an easy one. You posted this at thebigpicturereport.com. You want to draw parallels to Friedman? You want to go back to Friedman? Where do you want to go, Arlen? It's your time, your show.
Well, I think what Tom Hartman is saying, that their billionaires are getting more and more, getting richer and richer, while the rest of us are getting poorer and poorer. And, that's affecting the economy. It's affecting our politics. And, like I say, I think more and more people are aware of it. I think, Marjorie Taylor Greene had some problems, with a typical Republican line about, well, it's okay to give rich people as much as they want. So, it's a tough situation for this country when you got so many people who are doing so well, and that the Supreme Court is going to make it stick.
Watching Halitics, I'm Hal. We've got Arlen. It's an Arlen Tuesday. Arlen, what do you want to see the Democrats do? How do you want to see the Democrats take advantage of these inefficiencies in our government and our laws? And I'm going to throw into that mix the very lax gun laws that have resulted in so many, multiple killing sprees by gun nuts in this country. What would your advice to the Democrats be to try to take advantage politically of these crises?
Well, they already are taking advantage of it. They've been winning a lot of elections in this off-year election season, and they're doing quite well. But I think we both agree they've got to push harder and make voters understand that they have plans for the future to uplift the middle class and the working people, which is much different than what the Republicans have traditionally done. So, they need to just get their message out there, and by candidates who are maybe younger and more aggressive, the Mondamis and the AOCs. We need to make sure we just don't have a bunch of old men who are going to keep things roughly the way they are.
All right. We're going to move on to yet another story in a moment, but I thought that was a good answer, Arlen. I agree with what you said. I was really intrigued by something. I don't know, have you been following at all the Texas U.S. Senate race there? In the Democratic side, you have Jasmine Crockett and you have James Tallarico, who calls himself a progressive Christian, and they're pretty close. I think the latest polling has Crockett, who's kind of a firebrand African-American woman, congresswoman, ahead by about 8 points. This is something I thought was really, really interesting, because I would have thought and I ask you this as kind of a trap question, would you have considered Crockett to be the kind of candidate who would be likely to appeal to younger voters?
That's hard to say, Hal. If she does a real great job of campaigning, that just might work. The thing about Texas, though, it seems like every election season, it looks much better for the Democrats, but by the time the vote comes around, Republicans control everything. So, and another state we should think about is Indiana, where the Republicans decided they would not go for the gerrymandering and restructuring of their districts, which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, I actually talked in detail about Indiana with my guest yesterday, Hoosier Mike Olis, and he was involved in that process, defeating the Trump-led effort to gerrymander further the state. It's already gerrymandered, so I don't want to get too far into that. I think it's very interesting. But I will just say about Jasmine Crockett, let's see if we can get a picture of Congresswoman Crockett. I would have thought, I'm going to answer my own question, and then I would have really thought, this completely surprised me, that Jasmine Crockett would have appealed to younger voters, that her appeal, wherever she is relatively young. She's, a squad member. See if we can get a good picture of her from this human rights campaign where you can see that she's a young woman. I would have just assumed, Arlen, that she would have been popular among younger Texans, and it's just the opposite. The young Texans are all embracing Tallarico, the progressive, self-described progressive Christian, and it's the older Texas Democrats who seem to prefer Crockett. And I have to say, I don't even understand it. I mean, I guess they consider her, and I agree with the younger voters, not to be so progressive, but rather more anti-Trump than pro-worker, pro-environment, pro-peace. But Tallarico ain't so great either, by the way. Why don't I have a better? It doesn't even want to show the picture I've got there. So I can't even play my little game here and give you Crockett because it ain't working. I'm not getting her on the screen correctly. But yeah, I really have to say this really surprised me that she's not the darling of the younger Texans.
Well, my only experience seeing her has been on, videos that show her arguing with Republicans in Congress, and she does a great job doing that. So I don't know that much about her, and I don't know that much about Texas politics. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think if the Republicans keep getting more of a negative take from people, by doing the things that they are doing right now, that, maybe she does have a chance of actually winning.
Well, there's Crockett. I think the polling suggests that Tallarico would be stronger in a general election, which would be my thought as well for a variety of reasons. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join us. We'd love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. You had something else you want to add, Arlen?
Just that election is very far away, almost, 11 months or whatever. And so many things change between now and will change between, now and then that, we just can't say very confidently who's going to, do better.
Right. Or who'll even win the primary. Obviously, there's going to be quite a while. I don't know when the Texas primary is. I don't have the date, but probably in a few months. I think it's in March. Maybe wrong about that. All right, Robert Reich, you have this at and I'll look it up while we're talking. So you had another big picture report feature, and this is something you alluded to, Arlen, as well, and that is that maybe the end of Trump is near. So as much as I enjoyed hearing your analysis, give us what Reich is saying and how closely it jibes with what you believe.
Well, he probably can see the same things that I see, that, Trump is kind of crashing. He's losing his popularity. He's, like I said before, he's making up all kinds of crazy things and doing all kinds of crazy things, like criticizing somebody who just died. And I think, and so you can see that the Republicans, some are breaking away more and more, and that there's not the unanimous Trump can do whatever he wants feeling that we had before. There's going to be some opposition to a lot of things he does, and I think that'll make a big difference.
Does Reich, and I didn't read this piece closely, he writes, MAGA is cracking up, but beware. So that implies that the article is more about internal divisions within the Trump movement than Trump's mental failings. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think Trump, had solid backing by every Republican for such a long time, and now he's losing that. So it will not be as easy for him to just, do whatever he wants. And the more people break away from some of his policies, it's going to look bad. And, I just don't know if he can even handle it himself psychologically. And, they may try, like I say, they may try to get rid of him in the next few weeks. We'll see.
That Texas primary is coming up a lot sooner than we thought, Arlen. February 16 is the first day of early voting. So bear in mind, there's not a lot. It's less than it's exactly 2 months from now. So we will have at least a contender. One interesting facet of that race I learned is that there has been reporting, it's unclear how proven this is, but there has certainly been reporting that Republicans promoted Crockett in the hope that she would win the Democratic primary, viewing her as a easier out than Tallarico or Colin Allred, who was a previously former NFL player, previously also considering a run for U.S. Senate on the Democratic side. So the Republicans view Crockett as more easily defeated. And again, I would share that view. I think that Tallarico probably is a tougher to defeat. That said, I don't like him either. He is a big recipient of Miriam Adelson money. Crockett has not taken a strong enough stance against Israel. I don't know whether I would vote for either if I were a Texan at this point.
Another thing to consider why the Republicans might want her to run is because she's a black female. And, whether Texans will tolerate that or Republicans will tolerate that, I don't know. Texas, neither of us can do much about Texas. They're their own state. They have their own ways of doing things. And so I'm not going to predict.
I think that's a very fair point, Arlen. I agree with you. I think a black woman would face racism and sexism from some voters who might otherwise, of course, you always have to say, is this a voter who would vote for a Democrat otherwise? And probably voters who, aren't going to vote for a black woman might not vote for a Democrat, period. But I don't think that's fair. That's not a complete truth either. There conservatives in some ways, but not in others, and they may feel uncomfortable with a black woman. Obama himself said that some black men didn't want to vote for a woman. So, I don't know how much I buy what he said, but he did say it. So sure, that's another problem that Crockett would face.
Well, as I mentioned before, Democrats look like they might have a chance. They might do good in previous elections, and it turns out they don't do very good. And the Republicans, come out and win everything. And until Democrats start winning some elections, that may still be the case.
Well, Texas, you're right, has been a state. It's sort of tantalizing. It seems like it's right there for us. We can get it. We can win Texas, and then you don't win it. It's unfortunate. Yeah. Texas used to be a solid Democratic state. LBJ, of course, from Texas. Now, partly that's integration turned Texas red, but not solely. But that was certainly part of it. As recently as the 90s, Ann Richards was the governor of Texas.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, I think that just the Republican Party has just gotten more and more right-wing, more conservative, and they're, I guess, very powerful, and they put a lot of effort into winning, and they seem to have done very well so far. But, it's not impossible for somebody like a Democrat to win. It's just not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's true. The Republicans have gone further to the right. They become less populist. I think that gives the Democrats a little bit of an opening, I would say, though, because the people of Texas, or many of them, are suffering just like Americans all around the country. And if the Democrats spoke to them in ways that were clear and unmistakable and addressed the real insecurities that these folks face, I think they would have a real chance of prevailing. Let's get to this autopsy. That's what this autopsy says, right? Did you read this article? I was looking at it closely, but we have about 5 reasons. And what I like most about this article, Arlen, is it puts the responsibility for winning elections on the Democrats. It says, no, it doesn't say, oh, it's Trump, you can't beat him, or Trump this, or the voters are racist or something of that nature, which the Democratic Party could just simply throw up its hand and say, well, we tried. They're like, no, this is what you specifically did wrong. This is what you need to do better. I really appreciate that. What about you?
Yeah, I appreciate that too. I think they're making very good points. That we know the Democrats have to do something different because the last election was so horrific for them. But the question, but we both agree they need to push pro-worker policies. They need to talk about health care and education and all the other things that Democrats traditionally have pushed. But lately we've just been attacking Trump, and that hasn't really worked.
Here are the 5 reasons, and the first one, folks can read, is kind of small, but I will zoom in a moment. The first one is voter disenchantment. Losing a whopping almost 7 million voters who supported Biden in 2020 proved pivotal in this extremely close election. Harris's inability to mobilize these voters may have been the campaign's biggest failure. Now, that to me, though, isn't really an explanation. It's just, oh, she didn't mobilize them. But then you get to why didn't she mobilize them? And that's what the next 4 are about. The first explanation for the failure of those close to 7 million voters to stay in the Democratic fold 4 years later is Joe Biden, right? That there was real resentment, real anger at the party, at Biden, but at the party for trying to sort of sell this senile old man as tan, rested, and ready to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're right. That's hard to believe, but Joe Biden did a real disservice for the Democrats by hanging on far too long, and we see the results.
You said this long before Biden dropped out. Made this point a number of times, Arlen. I give you my hats off to you for that. Question about that. Is it fair? Fairness doesn't matter in a way. I mean, who cares? But I think it is so an important question. Is it fair for voters to have held Biden's incapacity and the failure of the party to recognize that or acknowledge that? Is it fair that voters held that against Kamala Harris?
Well, I think you're extra tough on Kamala Harris. I think a little bit unfairly because she didn't really have a long time to campaign, and she just, she was dropped into a position where, she felt she had to support the president, and that just turned out to be, a really bad decision, and she didn't do very well.
Well, I'll give you this. I'll make this point. I think it would be a lot to ask a vice president to say, and she was asked this, well, should you have done more? Should you? And she said, perhaps. I think that is a big ask. Now, my bigger beef with her is not that she came out against Biden before he stepped down. My beef is that she didn't separate herself from Biden after he stepped down. I think she should have done that. I think it was clear she had to do that. And her failure to do that, I don't excuse. But I do think it's fair to say, yeah, she's his vice president. There is certainly an expectation of loyalty there. Maybe people like Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, MSNBC pundits, CNN pundits, they should have all been loudly. Bernie Sanders, AOC, they didn't owe him that loyalty. They should have been demanding that Biden step down and that there be a primary process.
I'm just thinking about something that I think is also very important, and that is, Biden was kind of slow and not very strong and not very confident. But the other side of Trump is very energetic, very positive, very confident, and I think a lot of voters, responded to that and decided they would go for Trump over Biden.
Okay, another reason, I certainly think Trump, I don't know how energetic I would describe Trump in an absolute sense, but certainly by contrast to Biden, he appeared more energetic. And in fact, I don't think he looked particularly energetic or good when he was directly against Kamala Harris in the one debate they engaged in. Harris, by most accounts, certainly by my account, did better. She apparently gained support. He lost support, and he refused to debate her again. So to the extent that Trump looked, I guess, just simply vibrant, it was because he was in comparison to Biden, not necessarily even compared to a younger Kamala Harris.
You're right, and I think there's a lot of feeling about Trump that he really doesn't do that well in debates because he's not very articulate. Doesn't have all the information. So that would have maybe hurt him more if Biden hadn't messed up so badly.
Okay, a couple more reasons to go through, 3 more actually. Abandoning the working class base with millions of Americans disenchanted. This is what we were talking about earlier, the economic dislocations that people are feeling. With so many disenchanted and desperate, Harris lost the essential base by focusing on courting Republicans, kowtowing to corporate donor interests, and failing to confront the role of corporate greed in escalating inflation. I don't have anything to dispute about that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And she started, she did talk about oligopolistic pricing. Remember, she talked about price gouging at the supermarket. That was apparently, I didn't think she did it in a particularly effective way, but she did talk about price gouging. She said she would ask the Justice Department to investigate it. And there was pushback from media, from the Washington Post, was very much opposed to that plan. And then she stopped talking about it. It was apparently popular. It did go over well with voters. Big mistake by Kamala Harris.
She didn't really, like I said, I don't think she really had a chance. She didn't have a chance to get in there and campaign for a long time and really come up with a message that would work. And she failed to do that, and for a lot of reasons, which we've been talking about, including that, I think, but Biden for so many years and the Democrats were saying, oh, well, immigration is not that bad when we know that it was very much. And crime is not that bad. In other words, the Democrats really kind of ignored, and in the economy, the Democrats kind of ignored a lot of things, and they should have, they look kind of phony doing it, kind of like Trump is doing right now. And when Trump is saying, oh, no, the inflation is not high, things are going to be better, the economy is improving, when people can see that it isn't. So,
at some point you try to sell people a turd sandwich and tell them it's ham and Swiss, and they're like, no, you're really irritating me. This autopsy, by the way, the article written by Christopher Cook for Common Dreams. I think he does the Cook Political Report. I may be wrong about that. Cook is not that uncommon a name, but I do really hats off to Common Dreams for publishing this, Arlen. And I have to say, the failure of the Democratic Party to do a similar autopsy, I think, augurs ill for that party. They don't seem willing to look into the mirror and really address their failings. Do you share my concern in that regard? And do you think they will take these pretty obvious, I think, failings as set out by Christopher Cook seriously and address them?
I think they should take him seriously because he made all good points, and the Democrats have to make some changes, and he gave them a good blueprint to do so. So I just hope that the Democratic Party will listen to this particular summary.
All right, final 2 points here, and they go together. The Gaza effect and losing young voters. So many young voters obviously motivated by what they saw on social media, what they're reading about the Israeli occupation and genocide in Gaza, supported by the United States, turned them off Kamala Harris. So they go together. Gaza effect, losing young voters. Gaza effect also certainly Arab Americans, Muslim voters, millions of Muslim voters in this country. Really was a problem in Michigan. Wasn't the only factor that caused her Michigan, and it wasn't that state wasn't decisive, but obviously it didn't help. It didn't help.
Right. And
go ahead, Arlen.
Yeah. Well, also another voting group I think that we don't have to worry about as much is the minority vote, the blacks, Hispanics, because now that Trump is getting more and more racist, they're more and more anti-minority. I can't imagine they would vote for Trump again.
Studies support what you're saying. The Latino vote that broke pretty significantly, not by a majority, but by over 40% by some estimates for Trump, has largely slipped out of his grasp. And it is because of this aggressive, this cruel immigration policy, his, Latino, especially, recent generations tend to be Catholic. They have a sense of social justice. They certainly don't want to see their own country people from their homelands being abused, mistreated, and that's what they're seeing. So this is hurting Trump, but that's something you can't give the Democrat Party credit for, right? It's just Trump is so bad. They're like, yeah, we'll vote for the Democrats.
Yeah. Right.
All right, Arlen, we went through the autopsy. Anything, you get final word? Did I miss something? Was there another topic or another issue you want to address? Anything you want to say about the autopsy that maybe was missed, by the way?
I think the autopsy covered everything very well, and we covered everything very well. I don't see anything else we need to talk about right now, but it'll be, I am, though, interested in the fallback that Trump's going to get from his poor choice of words about Rob Reiner.
Yeah. I mean, he said what he believes. He sees himself as the center of everything. And if somebody is murdered by their mentally ill son, it must be because of me, Donald Trump, not because terrible things happen in this world. Arlen Grossman joins us pretty much every Tuesday. We're hoping to have him next week. Next week is Christmas week. I will be doing programs through the 24th. Probably will take off the rest. I've been taking off a few days. I'm going to continue that practice through the end of the year and then hopefully power through 26 with few, if any, breaks. Still fighting a cold. Hoping to have Arlen Christmas Eve next week. He will not be available Tuesday. Wednesday would be Christmas Eve. That would very probably my final show of 25. Arlen, you don't know yet, right? You're going to keep me posted on whether you're available.
I will keep you posted, Hal. And by the way, I don't want you to spend a lot of money on my Christmas present. I mean, keep it under 3 figures.
Darn, Brad, it's already on the way. Oh my, I'm going to have to, I think I can still cancel it if I'm lucky. So you're basically, that's really a hint for me to get you a Christmas present. Is that what you're trying? Because I actually hadn't. You weren't on my list. I don't give Christmas presents. But
I'm just messing with you, Alan. You know that.
I get Arlen something. I'll send you a nice little card, like one of those holiday video. I'll send you a family card or something.
Or you could email me, holiday wishes if you want.
Yeah, I'll send you the happy holidays. Yeah, no, have a great trip. Arlen going to the Big Apple. This isn't your first trip there, right? You've been to New York before.
I've been there before. This is the first time we've gone as a family, all 4 of us. So we're planning on having a really nice trip, going to Broadway, seeing the Rockettes and a few other things like that. We'll pack it in 4 days. It'll be fun.
You should have a lot of fun. Make sure you empty out your bank account. It's quite an expensive city. But if you're in California, LA and San Francisco ain't cheap either. So I guess that's where you spend your money on the coast. Arlen, have a great one. Have a great holiday if I don't speak to you before. Have a great New Year if I don't speak to you before. Folks, thank you so much for being part of Halitics. I will be back tomorrow, and we're going to be interviewing candidates later this week, as well as hopefully next week also.